The Silent Shift, Why 2026 is Different for American Drivers. Welcome to this special news analysis regarding the significant shifts in American transportation policy slated for early next year. Starting in February 2026, multiple U.S. states are rolling out a new wave of enforcement rules that fundamentally alter the relationship between the driver and the law. For those over the age of 65, this isn't just a minor update to the DMV handbook. It is a critical alert that demands immediate attention. The most dangerous aspect of these changes is their subtlety. The roads, the signs, and the habits you have relied on for decades may look identical, but the underlying enforcement system has changed quietly and, in many cases, permanently. In previous years, changes to driving laws were typically accompanied by extensive warning periods, public service announcements, and a certain level of officer discretion. However, 2026 marks a decisive transition away from human warnings and toward automated enforcement powered by advanced cameras, AI algorithms, and insurance-linked databases. This means a careful driver with a clean 40-year record can now be flagged and fined hundreds or even thousands of dollars for a single moment of technical non-compliance that they didn't even realize was illegal. As we begin this 13-part deep dive, we will explore why experienced drivers, rather than reckless teenagers, are currently being hit the hardest by this shift. We will examine how the system no longer prioritizes context or common sense appeals, but rather technical precision recorded by sensors. Stay tuned as we break down exactly what you need to know to protect your license, your finances, and your independence in this new era of automated compliance. The death of discretion, automation versus experience. The most significant shift coming in February 2026 is the transition from human judgment to algorithmic enforcement. For decades, a clean driving record and a polite conversation with a police officer might have earned a veteran driver a warning for a minor mistake. However, the new system being rolled out across multiple states removes that human element entirely. Automated enforcement via AI cameras and sensors does not care how long you have been driving or that you have a 40-year history of safe operation. It simply records a technical violation and forwards it to the relevant database. For seniors, this lack of discretion is a major concern. In 2026, many violations occur without a driver even realizing they have done anything wrong until a ticket arrives in the mail days or weeks later. By that time, the opportunity to explain the context of the situation, such as swerving to avoid an obstacle or slowing down slightly late in a shifting zone, has vanished. The system is designed for technical compliance, not common sense. This means that experience is no longer a shield. In fact, relying on old habits that were once good enough is exactly what is leading to thousands of dollars in fines for drivers over 65. The financial ripple effect, tickets, insurance, and budgets. In 2026, a traffic ticket is no longer just a one-time fine that you pay and forget. The integration of insurance-linked databases means that the moment a violation is logged, the financial damage begins to compound. For seniors living on fixed incomes, these budget-breaking surprises can be devastating. It is not uncommon for a single citation to trigger an insurance premium jump of 25% or more. When you consider that many older drivers already face higher premiums due to age-based risk models, a new mark on their record can make insurance nearly unaffordable. Industry data for early 2026 shows that a distracted driving citation can raise premiums by $225 to $450 annually, often staying on the record for 3 to 5 years. This means a single moment of reaching for a phone could eventually cost well over $1,000 in total. Furthermore, the system now tracks violations across state lines more effectively than ever. A senior who is a safe driver in their home state might be flagged for an automated violation while visiting family in another state, leading to a surprise registration denial or a sudden insurance spike upon their return. Hands-free and high stakes. The new distracted driving standard. One of the fastest spreading changes nationwide is the move to primary enforcement for distracted driving. In the past, many states used secondary enforcement, meaning an officer needed another reason to pull you over, like a broken tail light. As of February 2026, more than a dozen additional states have authorized officers to stop a vehicle solely because they see a phone in the driver's hand or even the glow of a screen on their lap. The definition of use has also expanded aggressively. The biggest trap for experienced drivers in 2026 is the assumption that a car is not being operated while stopped at a red light. The law now clearly states that if you are in the driver's seat and in control of the vehicle, you are actively operating it, even with your foot on the brake. Tapping a screen to dismiss a notification or scrolling a playlist while waiting for a green light can now result in a first-time fine ranging from $200 to $500 plus court fees. To avoid these technical violations, experts suggest that 2026 is the year to stop improvising and invest in a simple $15 dashboard mount to keep the phone entirely out of your hands. Hidden cameras and AI, speed monitoring in construction zones. Automated speed enforcement is entering a new, more precise phase in 2026. States like Michigan are leading the way with AI-powered systems specifically designed for construction zones. These cameras are paired with radar and timing software that tracks a vehicle's speed continuously as it passes through the work zone. The precision is absolute. There is no 5-mile-per-hour buffer that many drivers have traditionally relied on. If you exceed the posted limit by even a small margin, the system records your plate and issues a citation. What makes these zones particularly dangerous for seniors is that the cameras are active whenever workers are present, but presence is defined very broadly. A single worker standing behind a safety barrier is enough to trigger the system. Furthermore, because construction zones often shift or have temporary signage that looks similar to inactive areas relying on memory or traffic flow is no longer safe. The safest approach in 2026 is to treat every construction sign as an absolute command. If the sign says 45, you must drive 45, as the margin for error has essentially disappeared. The school zone trap, timing, tech, and zero tolerance. Following the trend of construction zones, cities are rapidly expanding automated speed cameras into school zones across states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida. These systems do not operate all day. Instead, they are tied to the school's specific schedule, typically activating 30 minutes before the first bell and remaining active until 30 minutes after dismissal. During these windows, speed limits often drop to 15 or 20 miles per hour. Because there are often no flashing lights or immediate feedback, many drivers don't realize they've been caught until the letter arrives days later. Courts in 2026 have been incredibly strict, consistently ruling that drivers are responsible for knowing school schedules and adjusting their speed immediately upon entering a zone. Appeals based on not seeing the sign or slowing down but not fast enough rarely succeed. For seniors, the best defense is time awareness and technology. Navigation apps like Waze and Google Maps are increasingly marking these zones, but the most reliable habit is to build a mental buffer. Assume every school zone is active during morning and afternoon hours, regardless of whether children are visible. Shrinking margins. The move to 0.05 BAC. For decades, the number 0.08 was the universal legal line for sobriety in the U.S. However, a powerful shift is occurring in 2026 as more states adopt the Utah approach, lowering the legal blood alcohol concentration, BAC, limit to 0.05. Legislators in Washington, New York, and Hawaii are pushing these reductions to combat fatal crashes. For older drivers, this change is particularly consequential because the body's ability to metabolize alcohol changes with age. A BAC of 0.05 can be reached with just one glass of wine at dinner or a single beer at a social gathering. In 2026, what used to be considered social drinking can now lead to a DUI conviction. The penalties for crossing the 0.05 threshold are just as severe as the old 0.08 standard, including immediate license suspension, ignition interlock requirements, and fines up to $2,000. For seniors, a DUI is not just a legal nightmare. It can trigger intense scrutiny during license renewal and lead to insurance cancellations. The new rule of thumb for 2026 is simple. If you plan to drink at all, do not drive. The free ride ends. New annual fees for electric vehicles. As more seniors switch to electric vehicles, EVs, to save on fuel and maintenance, they are being met with a new financial reality in 2026. Since roads are traditionally funded through gas taxes, the rise of EVs has created a massive funding gap for infrastructure maintenance. To solve this, more than 40 states have implemented mandatory annual road use fees for EVs by January 2026. These fees are now appearing on registration renewal notices, often ranging between $100 and $250 per year. In states like New Jersey and Pennsylvania, these fees are tiered based on the vehicle's value or age, and in some cases, they increase automatically every year. Beyond flat fees, some states are using 2026 to pilot mileage-based road usage charges. This shifts the tax from the type of fuel used to the actual distance driven. While these programs are currently optional in most places, they signal a long-term shift toward taxing drivers for every mile they travel. For seniors on a fixed budget, it is vital to read registration renewals carefully to avoid being blindsided by these new mandatory costs. Immediate impoundment, reckless driving, and loss of control. In early 2026, the law regarding reckless driving has moved from abstract fines to physical consequences. Law enforcement agencies in several states have been granted broader authority to seize vehicles on the spot for behaviors that used to result in a mere ticket. This includes exhibition of speed, which can be interpreted as accelerating too aggressively from a stop or spinning tires. While these rules were designed to target illegal street racing, they are increasingly catching older drivers in unintentional situations. For example, a senior who accelerates sharply to merge into fast-moving highway traffic or briefly loses traction on a wet road could potentially have their vehicle impounded for up to 30 days. There is no grace period or fix-it option in these scenarios. The car is towed immediately. The financial burden is immense, with towing and storage fees often totaling $1,500 to $3,000. The administration's message is clear. Public roads are not for experimentation, and once a vehicle is tagged as part of a reckless incident, the burden of proof to get it back falls entirely on the owner. DMV modernization, in-person renewals, and the vision test. There is some cautiously positive news for senior drivers in 2026, but it comes with a procedural catch. Several states have raised the age at which mandatory behind-the-wheel road tests begin, acknowledging that seniors are often the most cautious drivers on the road. However, while the road test might be delayed until one's late 70s or 80s, other requirements have become much stricter. In states like California and Florida, seniors can no longer renew their licenses online. An in-person appearance is now mandatory. The goal of these in-person visits is to assess vision, physical mobility, and alertness more frequently. While this sounds reasonable, the logistical reality of the DMV in 2026 is one of limited appointments and long delays. If a senior fails to appear in person because they assumed the old online renewal system still worked, their license can expire fully. Reinstating an expired license under these new rules is a nightmare, often requiring the driver to retake all written and road tests from scratch. The advice for 2026 is to treat any DMV renewal notice as urgent and book an appointment months in advance. Digital identity and documentation. The gold standard license. Starting in 2026, your driver's license is being treated less like a driving permit and more like a high-security identity document. States are moving toward a gold standard framework that requires much more rigorous documentation for renewals. This means providing original birth certificates and verified Social Security numbers, even for those who have held a license for 50 years. For non-citizens, the license validity is now strictly tied to their visa status. If a visa expires in 6 months, the license expires on the same day. At the same time, the rollout of digital driver's licenses or mobile IDs is accelerating. These encrypted credentials live on your smartphone and are designed to prevent AI-generated identity fraud. However, having a digital ID does not replace the need for in-person verification. In fact, some states are making in-person visits more frequent specifically to ensure the person holding the digital ID is a real human being. For seniors, the risk is assuming that digital means automatic. Driving with an invalid license, even if the expiration was an accidental oversight, can lead to denied insurance coverage and severe legal penalties in 2026. Broadened safety. The new move over hazard rule. Move over laws have been around for years, but in 2026 they have been significantly broadened to protect more than just police and ambulances. The new standard, taking effect in multiple states, requires drivers to move over or slow down for any stationary vehicle displaying hazard lights. This includes tow trucks, maintenance vehicles, and regular passenger cars that are broken down on the shoulder. Ignoring a family car with blinking hazards while you are in the adjacent highway lane is now a moving violation. The penalties have doubled or even quadrupled in some jurisdictions to reinforce compliance, with fines often exceeding $1,000. Roadside fatalities have reached record levels, and the law now treats a stranded motorist with the same legal protection as an emergency responder. For seniors, this requires a shift in how they scan the road ahead. Flashing lights of any color are now an early warning to check mirrors and plan a lane change. If you cannot safely move over, you must slow down significantly until you have passed the vehicle. This change is about more than avoiding a ticket. It's about basic roadside survival. A performance-based privilege, summary, and action steps. As we wrap up this 2026 driving alert, the overarching theme is clear. A driver's license is no longer a one-time achievement, but a performance-based privilege that is constantly being evaluated by technology. Whether you are a new driver navigating the strict zero-tolerance probation periods of the 2026 graduated licensing systems, or a senior maintaining your independence, the system is watching more closely than ever. Automation has replaced human discretion, and data sharing has made the financial consequences of a mistake nearly instantaneous. To protect yourself starting February 2026, follow these 4 steps. First, check your state's DMV website for specific 2026 updates as laws vary by county. Second, invest in hands-free technology and stop using your phone at red lights. Third, treat all construction and school zones as zero-margin areas. Drive exactly the posted speed. Finally, handle your license renewals months in advance to ensure you meet the new in-person and documentation requirements. In 2026, staying informed is just as important as staying in your lane. By adapting your habits now, you can preserve your finances, your license, and your freedom on the road.